All right, in this video, we're looking at the Genesis G90, the 2023 G90, and quick checklist. Of course, I'm using the Canon 5D Mark II, which I've used for years. Love this camera. The Canon 24-105L is going to be the lens today. Using the Westcott, the Icelite 2 with the burn doors, and on the Icelite, we'll use a monopod. For the camera, we'll use the tripod, and of course, I'm wearing all black clothes. So all black clothes, really gonna help me in terms of me showing up in the exposures when I'm doing the light painting. This is a white car, so it shouldn't be much issue, but when I do some lower exposures, you probably see my shoes in it, probably see some little walking, but it's okay. I'm gonna get an exposure low for the wheels, but I only need the wheels. So if there's some things in there I don't want, it's really not a big deal. So moving the car around, making sure we get it in position. I moved it a couple times. I wanted to get, of course, a shot from the rear, some from the front as well. Some pretty tight quarters here, but moving it around to get a good exposure, minimizing some of the things in the background, covering up some of the things that I didn't want as well is really what I needed to get started. So first exposure is a background exposure. So the background exposure, we're simply going to do a 25-second exposure. F11 should do. If it is overexposed, completely fine. So if it's overexposed just a bit, I can simply just bring this down with the exposure slider or the highlight slider in Lightroom before bringing it into Photoshop. And here's the exposure background, 25 seconds. Like I said, F11. It is a little bright. I'll bring that down a bit before bringing it into Lightroom to blend with the other exposures. Secondly, we're going to use the start with the Icelite for the first exposure. Going to use the burn doors, and the burn doors are going to help direct the light itself to the portions of the car that I'm really focusing on. And for the Icelite, I do have some black tape around the little lights that are on there that can sometimes bleed into your photo. I've left on those for quite some time. And I'm going to mount the Icelite on a monopod. So the monopod is really going to help me get away from the light source itself, get a little further away while directing the light. And that's going to minimize the effects of me getting in the exposure. Again, probably not much of an issue with this white car, but do as much as possible. And I do like using the monopod for the Icelite. So I really recommend it if you're using the Icelite too. We'll do a 13-second exposure at F10. We have the timer set on 10 seconds for this. We'll start it, get into position, and wait for the click of the camera to start, and start the exposure with the light. So knowing that I have the 13 seconds, just keeping that in mind in my head as I walk around the side of the car, and ending it and listening to the click of the camera for the exposure. This is the side at 13 seconds at F10. Pretty good. This, like, just one exposure on a white car really covers pretty much all of the side. I'm going to need another side exposure to get those handles in. Couldn't really figure out the handles in the car, so just made two exposures to blend. Next exposure, we're going to do the side again, but we're going to get a little lower. Now, the wheels looked pretty good in that first one, but if I wanted something else to work on with more light covering the inside of the wheels, I'm going to get this low exposure just to have it if we need to use that later, which we ended up doing. That's 10 seconds at F13. Back wheel looks great, maybe slightly overexposed. The front one is a little underexposed compared. So that's an easy fix with exposure adjustments that you can probably do in Lightroom is easy because it's an easy mask before you bring it into to Photoshop. Overexposed on the car with the blinkies, again, no problem. Simply reduce the exposure on that just to get exactly what we're looking for. Next exposure on the top. So we're just going around the top of the car, making sure that the light source doesn't fall below the roof line of the car because it'd be pretty much impossible to get out. But this just really fills in kind of the trunk, fills in the hood as well if I was taking the front 3/4. But as you see with the light streak, it just brings a little bit more light to the back if I wanted to use that to fill in. Couple other exposures I took as well. This is simply a 1-second exposure at F13, just getting light, and I was playing around with the f-stop and the exposure time just to get a light effect that I wanted. These are very easy to adjust. The highlight adjustment really does a lot with these lights, but the second exposure getting the light strip on the back, the LED light strip, and we're going to use these for the exposure And here is the final image. We'll go through step by step what I did on each of these layers, what I did to enhance them, and the things I used for each layer. All right, so let's take a look at the photo here. Here is the final images. The final image, we have all of the layers open. So we'll go through and show you what I did with each of those layers and how they all came together to be this final photo. So let's take all of these off here, and we'll start from the beginning. So I do have these grouped as car. So what I usually do is work on the car itself in the exposure and put it in a group just for organization. So for the first thing, here is the background image. Again, the background image just doesn't have any light at all. It's just a timed exposure. Start really at 15 seconds, go up to 30 for the max, just to get that exposure for the background when I need to use that. Second one, this is mirror. So what you saw when I was doing the other one, I actually took 2 exposures of the side. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get the mirror out while having the handles in. It wouldn't work. I couldn't figure out how to do that on the car itself, so I just took 2 exposures to blend them together and just really kind of put the mirror in. So I didn't want to take the time, really mess around with the car's features just to find this, even if it was in there. Kind of a waste of my time when I could be taking photos, of course. So that's the side there. So the mirror, and then if we click on the side here, it shows you, if you want to take a look, you'll see the handles kind of go in. So that's the difference in the 2 exposures. Next, here's the wheel exposure, and what I did is I'll load the selection. Wheels. So I simply made a selection with the pen tool around the wheels so I could adjust the exposure as I wanted. So if we're looking at the wheels here, the opacity is at 75. I could increase that if I want. They were quite bright, but that's a great thing. If they're overexposed just slightly, I can always bring back down the opacity to match with the exposure of the car itself. And let's get rid of that selection. Next thing is the tail lights. So this is the first tail light, and there's the second one, which is actually named side lights here. For the tail lights, you'll see here, I'll just click these on and off so you can see the effect that they bring. That's what the light strips on the back. And what I did is they didn't really pop as much as I wanted to. So I added a hue saturation, kind of a hue saturation layer that just affects this tail light. So if I click that on, if you take a look over here, looking at the back, you'll see the effect that has. Just brings out a little more of the color, a little more of the glare of the light itself as well. Next is side lights. Now this is named side lights, and the exposure I originally had taken was underexposed. It didn't get exactly what I wanted, but when I was looking at it, I liked the effect that this had on the wall, and I liked the color and the warmth that it added as well. So I simply just bumped up the exposure and just used that portion along with these little lights in the headlight. I didn't really use much on the side lights there, even though it kind of generates this little reflection. I left that in there. I kind of like it because it could be coming from the light outside, whatever. But anyway, it does add some color to that, and just wanted to leave that in. So again, let's just turn this on and off so you can take a look. And then that's it. That's the exposure for the car. There's some cleanup needed. You'll see there's kind of a streak over here where the light was. Obviously, there's some foreground stuff we need to work on, so we'll take a look at that next. Now, the next layer that I have here is the clean layer. So there's quite a bit. I took my time with this because as a shop, it is quite dirty, especially with the floor. So I wanted to go by and kind of clean it up as much as possible without making it look like it was insanely too clean. Like it wouldn't really necessarily be as clean as possible in this environment. Another thing I wanted to take out in the background, and I'll take this off, is any kind of logos or wording. Usually when you're taking photos for a particular car and for a brand, any other brand names or any other logos that are in the photo are pretty much a no-no, because they do want to use these to promote just the car. And so taking these out is really easy, especially with a dark background. So I just kind of simply clone these out. There's some little logos here. This is a Worth logo and stuff. Oh, kind of move that around. Didn't mean to do that. So with the clean logo on, you'll see cleaned up quite a bit. And just kind of make that more clean. I was debating leaving this little reflection in here, but it was kind of too small to really make much of an impact, so I went ahead and took that out. Next, so we're going to take the car here, and what I did next, and I'll load another selection. This is the car. Always a good step to take. Made a selection around the car. Good thing with this car, it's pretty simple in terms of its design. It's pretty easy design to really trace with the pen tool. There's nothing really sticking out. There's no wings or anything. So simply going around this was quite easy. Made a feather, I think, of 1 pixel, saved the selection. And the reason being is because if I want to make any adjustments in the background, add anything to the foreground, I could easily just cut it out with a mask from one that I had saved. So I'm going to take that off for now, so you can take a look. So with the flare, this is the first one. I call this the just flare one. What I did is I just added a brush tool. I sampled the color from, I think it was pretty much right here on the light, and I added a little bit of light on the back. Good thing is it kind of bled out through the bottom, which it probably would if there was a light behind there, but also back here. So I wanted to separate the car a little more from the background itself. So if we take that off and take a look, just on and off, giving it a little bit of glow to separate the car from the dark background itself. The second one, Flare 2. Now, you probably won't even see this because it's very, very low. If we're clicking, let's see, click on this here. The opacity is only 13%. I'll just hike this up for a sec so you can see it. So 100%, it's huge. Obviously, that looks terrible, but I wanted to give just a little bit of light leak. So say, for example, if we had this flare here, if there was some sort of light or reflection that would come off a white car, it would probably leak over here. So I added that. It was only at 13%. Let's just put that up again. So we have that. And then the final thing, we have some warm glow over here. We have some warm here and some warm here as well. I wanted to balance it out, add a little, well, not exactly balance, but add a little coolness to it as well with a different particular light source. So that's what Flare 3 is. It's blue. I just sampled the color blue, added a huge brush, and same thing with the opacity, just lowered that. This is very, very low at 8%. I'll put it up here so you can take a look. So this is really what it started, a full 100% brush. Always used 100% because on another layer, you can always just adjust the opacity. So no sense going down on the brush size when you can just do that with the opacity. So 8%, and that's the photo. So the blend of the photo didn't take a lot in terms of the light painting blending. White cars are so much easier to photograph than dark cars because you eliminate a lot of reflection, and then with one light pass, you end up covering quite a bit of the car. So if you're just getting started with light painting, I'd suggest starting with a light car if possible, because it's really going to show you the capabilities before moving on to a dark one, which can show a ton of reflection, especially in an environment like this. You're going to get some reflections from over here, which was kind of an open bay. And there's also some cars and some other things over here, and they would really show, and it does take some time to really plan to get those out with light painting or take some time to do it in Photoshop. And that's it for this video. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.